Hey guys, welcome back to Hook with Anime. If you like the video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. Chapter 1. She's scared. She hadn't been this scared ever since she became a kunoichi. She hadn't been this scared when they went on their first ever mission to the Land of Waves. She hadn't been this scared either when she repeatedly begged Sasuke not to leave the village. Generally, she hadn't been this scared even when she was badly hurt on every one of those dangerous missions. But now, she tried to force her tears back into her eyes and focused on her work. She needs to do it fast. She must not fail. Because if she didn't succeed, she wouldn't forgive herself. Her heart racing and pounding hard in her chest, she breathed air again. Sakura bent down for the nth time and placed her lips on Naruto's as she continued to give him CPR while pumping his heart with her arms slid from his inside, mimicking a normal person's heartbeat. She could even see her hand glowing green from the cut she had made. A couple of minutes had already passed since Gaara took her with them using his sand, heading to where Minato and Kakashi were, but there were still no responses. However, she didn't stop. She's tired and can feel her chakra decreasing every second by reviving her friend using her medical ninjutsu. Not to mention she's almost drained during those fights with the others. Her eyes narrowed from frustration and fear when his body was still not responding, even with all her help. Pulling back her lips, she shakily draws a breath only to do it all over again. She couldn't let Naruto die. Not here. Not when everyone is depending on him, in the middle of the war. Please. Please don't you dare die on me, Naruto. Sakura's breathing was stifled by the thought, and she suppressed her tears. She knew. She already knew that there was no more life in him, but she kept going because she couldn't take the fact that Naruto, their ball of sunshine, their hero, their friend, was already dead. Even when Gaara told her that there was no other way to save Naruto but to transfer Kurama's other half from his father, she didn't want to just stare at him and do nothing. She knew that these were of no use, but she tried anyway. She is so scared. She doesn't want to lose him, no more. Suddenly, all her memories of him flashed in her mind. Every happy moment, their bickering, every sad day, everything. Why? Why did she think of these? He'll live, right? There is still a chance. He'll live. She shook her head from the distraction. Focus, Sakura, she added. Then she bit the insides of her cheeks to regain her full attention. But not a second later, when she felt an enormous chakra that she had never felt before. My, he's already dead. What a shame. Her eyes widened in fear at the voice. Uchiha Madara. He was smirking at them while he followed their pace with his floating ability. The thundering in her chest doubled as she scanned the man's new features. He now has white hair, pale skin with a scale-like texture, especially the soul Rinnegan in his eye. No, this can't be. TCH, Gaara muttered under his breath at their sudden company. Why is he here? Worry and fear filled his heart as he started to move faster with his sand, not batting an eyelash to fully assist in their current situation. He stared at Sakura from his peripheral vision and saw her eyes widen with fear and shock. Her lips parted slightly. He frowns heavily as he tries to recall what happened to cause him to take on this new appearance. You're the current Kazekage, right? He stared at Madara when he spoke to him with a smirk on his face. He didn't respond but eyed him narrowly, full of hate and disgust written on his face. You knew very well that I am much faster compared to your pathetic grains of sand, so why bother? Madara said, with a fake confusion on his face. Gaara cursed under his breath and began to fasten their pace, glancing at Sakura's direction to make up a plan. Thankfully, she was now out of her stunned complexion as she nodded to him firmly. Everything could be done as long as they could get away from him. Deep inside, he knows that whatever their plan was, it would not work against the man, especially when they're still unaware of his new power. Shut the hell up, bastard. He wouldn't let anything happen to Naruto after all the things that he had done to save him. Naruto was the one who changed his life. The one who gave him hope and light, his friend. His ally. He cannot stop right here. He needs to get to Minato as fast as he can. Gathering up all his strength, Gaara formed his hand into a fist, making an exact form of it with his sand but multiplied, then sent it to Madara's direction. As expected, he dodges it gracefully, and it may not be much of a help to create a damage, but it was enough to distract him and get as far from him as possible. He looked again at Sakura, who was now glaring daggers at the man, her hands glowing green, healing Naruto's side that she had sliced a couple of minutes ago with her blade made of chakra. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks. Gaara can see that the girl is obviously near her limit, and he needs her to take care of Naruto until they get there. But now that Madara is here, he didn't think that they could get there together, so the only choice is Sakura. I'll send you two ahead, but I will keep my distance from you. I will take care of him. She watched mindlessly as her face filled with second thoughts, until it changed into a firm and saddened one. A slight smile brought up to his lips. He expresses gratitude that Sakura knew exactly what to do despite knowing the serious consequences, and that's exactly what he needed her to do. Now, Gaara muttered, pushing his right hand forward, finally working with his plan. Sakura almost lost her balance with the sudden speed but recovered quickly. Now that they're a safe distance ahead, he hardened his gaze as he watched Madara prepare to follow them despite his endless sand punches. So he turned around his body to face him and brought his two arms to block his way, adding spikes as he threatened to break through it. Madara hissed when some of the spikes scratched his skin, leaving thin trails of blood. Gaara didn't waste any time as he made another jutsu and imprisoned the man in it, giving another surge of endless spikes inside of it to do more damage. He took a glance toward Sakura and Naruto, biting his bottom lip when he still couldn't see any signs of the previous Hokage's location. He's worried that he can now control his sand even for a great distance, but he didn't know to what extent. That's why he has to be very careful to manage his distance between Madara and Sakura. It was nothing but a merely gamble, but it was their only option. And now, he didn't think that they could make it. He can feel his hands shaking from the immense power that Madara releases to cause his sands to crumble and turn into their original pieces. Glaring silently, he notices Madara's body producing steam and evidently healing his scratches faster than before. A huff came out of his mouth. So he can heal himself now. Kyukyoku no Haduabusoryoto Ataku, Shukaku no Yari. Gathering up more of his strength, Gaara sends his sands to the man for another round, attempting to increase Sakura's speed and, at the same time, activating his sand bomb that was implanted a while ago, causing a deafening explosive sound that blows up some parts of his body. For a normal person, this would be an instant kill, but it's always different when it comes to this man. And he knew that he should not celebrate yet. Squinting, he noticed his shadow had come to a halt, his shoulders shaking as if the man found this scene amusing. However, steam is once again emerging from him, regenerating his body in no more than a second. And that was the moment where he felt frightened. How? Ha 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 ha, you sure are a pain in the ass, cage brat. You see, that kid had no chance to survive now. The remaining half chakra of that damn fox is now inside of me, and you can't do anything about it unless you defeat me. Which I'm sure that you can't. Ha ha ha. Now, can we dance? Gaara's eyes widened when the man appeared beside him in less than a nanosecond and suddenly kicked his face with an insane amount of strength he had never felt. His sand didn't even make it to cover himself for defense like usual. Gaara. Sakura terrifiedly watched as the bastard sent Gaara flying thousands of feet back to the direction where they came from. There is no way that Gaara would quickly recover from that impact. Just how much power did Madara gain so that he could send a person that far? Not to mention, how Gaara's attack was just nothing to him. The pink-haired glared with teary eyes at Madara, who was now entertainingly watching how far Gaara would land. She can feel her rage rising as she stands and directs her chakras to her feet in order to avoid falling due to the harsh blow of wind that was passing through her body. Why you? How could someone like you fucking exist in this world? You're a fucking monster. A fucking murderer. You're nothing but a crazy fucking old man who wishes peace by trapping everyone by their own desires inside your fucking nonsense genjutsu. Do you think everyone will like that? Then what? What will you do when you succeed? Fall into your own jutsu? Is that it? She knew that he would not be able to hear it given their distance, but she just couldn't take it anymore. Her tears finally flowed like a river from her eyes. She was pissed, to the point that she used the word fucking in every sentence. Her palm started to bleed by clenching it tight, her nails digging deeper into her flesh. Sakura glared at the man and was planning on how she would be able to protect themselves without Gaara. Having that said, her eyes widened and she felt her heart skip a beat when she could no longer feel the hard sand beneath them. Gaara's sand started to get blown by the wind, resulting in both of them falling aggressively. She cursed loudly and used her skills to catch Naruto's cold body. No life at all. When she grabbed his torso, she quickly hugged him and protected his head for the impact. She closed her tear-stained eyes and braced herself for the pain when she couldn't focus her already low reserve of chakra to balance herself and Naruto to land gracefully on battered ground. She couldn't help it when lots of blood escaped her mouth as her back touched the ground from their first fall. A loud crack can be heard coming from her ribs when it connects to the messed up ground. knocking the wind out of her lungs. And it didn't stop there. When they rolled continuously, they kept bouncing and rolling many times, but nevertheless, she never let go of Naruto's lifeless body in her arms. Until seconds later, they came to a stop. Her back once again collided with the massive rock that was destroyed by the battle. Now that it's all over, her brain produces signals to her body and... hell! The pain is unbearable. Her whole body throbbed and it hurt so much, she felt like joining her friend in the other world. Nonetheless, she still chose not to give in to the idea as she had a battle to win. Sakura forced her eyes open, which took too much effort for her liking. She couldn't move. Yet she forced herself to do it because if she didn't, no one would do it for her. No one would be able to save Naruto. She was now all by herself. Alone. She pushed Naruto away from her with care. She released his head from her grasp and laid him flat on his back. Wincing from the movement that made her breathing become more ragged. After a few seconds of concentrating on her breathing, she placed her elbow on the ground in an attempt to sit, and she surprisingly succeeded. Though she cannot help but to wince and cry out of pain with her every movement. A pained smile crept up to her lips when she looked at Naruto's pale face. There was no grin like there always used to be. That grin that always cheered everyone up was now gone. It always made her feel safe, but now that it was gone, she didn't know anymore. She chuckled. And chuckled until she burst into laughter. She laughed like a madman from everything that was happening. She laughed and laughed while pushing herself to stand. She knows nothing anymore. Her knees wobbled under her, but she quickly caught herself and gained balance. Her grip on the rock tightened when she was about to fall over again, so she leaned onto it to keep herself from falling. It was when her laugh died down and then a sob came from her. She's losing her mind, and she's aware of it. Everyone else's faces flashed through her eyes, making her sob harder, not daring to hide her face from her enemy. He's now a few meters away from her, and she didn't even notice his presence until now. "Ha, you're irritatingly loud. Has anyone told you that?" he said with a disgusted face. Sakura watched as Madara slowly floated in her direction and landed softly on the ground, 5 feet away from her. Sakura stared at the ground, feeling no emotion, keeping a stoic expression that she didn't even know she had in her. Maybe because this is what it feels like when you can feel that there's no hope anymore. With Madara's Kami-like powers and with Naruto dead, she's sure that there's just no way to win now. She did think of dying right then, but it would be a shame to die just like that. At any rate, she still wants to fight till the last of her breath. And who knows? Perhaps, everyone will come to their aid. It's funny how she still wishes to be saved even after all this time. She really was a disappointment. Now, with a determined thought, she faced Madara with no expression on her face. She formed a hand sign and, with the last of her strength, activated the 100 healing mark on her forehead, followed by a tattoo slowly covering up her bruised body and healing it as it did so. A smirk entered her lips, recalling her short talk with her Shisho about his weakness, and she thinks it's worth a try. He can only be beaten with taijutsu, and we're one of those who can defeat him. Sakura, however, I almost died even with the help of other cages. Shanaru. Sakura shouted, wasting no time as she threw her fist at Madara's face, who was slightly shocked at her strength. He must have thought so lowly of her when he didn't even try to dodge it. Sakura's confidence leveled up when he flew a few yards away, but he quickly regained balance as he used his foot, proving that somehow, it has no effect on him. He smirked at her, so, in annoyance, she ran again and prepared to kick using her left foot, but Madara simply dodged her attack, a smirk still plastered on his face. "So you have that power like Tsunade, huh? Obviously, did I hurt you earlier?" she asked sarcastically, then continued to attack with all her might, trying different patterns to catch him off guard. She switched her timings, positions, and landings every time, not daring to stop. Those loud bangs whenever her punches and kicks collided with Madara can be heard. But it only creates slight damage to the man. She knew this would be the result from the very start. And what kept her going was nothing. She's just waiting to die. She kept going and didn't really care about what will happen to her. Was she being selfish? She knew that there were still many shinobi somewhere fighting with them for peace. Peace? Oh right, she remembered. They're fighting for it. But why? What pushes her to fight when she can't think right anymore? Was it peace? Nah. She and Tsunade were the only ones with a seal to make sure that all shinobi who got hurt will heal, and as far as she remembered, Tsunade was low on chakra after healing her own body to be put together. Sakura remembered the torn part of clothing in the middle of her teacher's body. Even a powerful woman like Tsunade can't keep up with this man. So if she kept fighting here without a care for her life and Tsunade in a vulnerable state, everyone would not have a chance to recover. No recover, no power. No power, no life. So what is she still doing here? Is she really being that selfish? TCH. Was what escaped her mouth when Madara caught her foot from the side of his face. She acted quickly and turned all her weight up to release her foot from his strong grasp. Until she was suddenly behind him from above, she didn't waste time as she put all her strength into that last kick, which she succeeded in as he watched him slide to the ground, face first, and all the rocks he passed broke by his head. Sakura bent over and put her hands on her knees as she slowly felt all the aftereffects of the seal. The tattoos that once wrapped around her body slowly made their way back to the seal. She could feel herself weakening. All the muscles in her body were burning from overexertion, but she stayed at her feet, unwilling to give up yet. Madara came to a stop and he slowly stood up using his pole that he had held from the beginning. He laughed. I didn't know that I will fall from that again. You're clearly Tsunade's student, you didn't fail to amaze me, ha ha ha. Sakura watched him with a wary eye. She didn't know if she should be happy about the compliment or be scared for her life. Should she run? For once, she could clearly see that he was pissed. But then, Madara suddenly became serious. However, playtime is over. Now I will let you decide. Would you like me to kill you first, or would you like me to kill him again? He said and looked to the right. Her eyes widened when she followed where he was staring. The only one she knew who was there is. What do you mean? He's dead, she shouted. Pain and sadness couldn't be hid behind her stoic voice. Are you certain? He said. Her face is filled with confusion as she mumbles. Sakura looked at Naruto again with wide eyes, concentrating the little chakra she had left, and felt something. Life. She can feel Naruto's chakra. And Naruto, she shouted and ran towards her fallen teammate, laying on the ground looking lifeless, but there was little life, she could feel it. She pushed herself to run, even when she couldn't feel her legs. She focused chakra on her feet. Adrenaline suddenly kicked in and she ran as fast as she could. He is alive. Okay then. After him, you're next. Her eyes once again widened at his words. She needed to get there fast. Just a little more. She leaned forward in the hope that it would make it faster. Just a little more. Dread filled her gut as she saw him from her peripheral vision preparing to attack, his hands raised forward with that black thing forming slowly on his palms like a soft ball. She watched as Madara fired it, and she knew what damage it could do, but still she continued to run. Naruto. Sakura shouted as she threw herself at the blonde and braced him again in her arms. As she watched in slow motion how the black thing approached itself in their direction. She closed her eyes tightly and waited for the impact, but it never came. She opened her eyes, but all that she could see was a white light enveloping them. Then her world goes black. Chapter 2. Cell. Sakura didn't know how long she lay there without moving an inch of her body on the hard and chunky surface. She's tired. Exhausted. Her mind was still hazy and she had no idea what had happened. Even with her eyes still closed, she counts from 1 to 3 to concentrate and feel her surroundings. And it's so peaceful that she felt like staying like this forever. But then, she remembered. Scenes of her last moments flashed through her eyes and inwardly flinched when she thought back of Madara's last jutsu that surely ended it all. Is she alive? Because she swore, she couldn't feel every part of her body. Having that said, Naruto's lifeless body flashed. His pale face. No pulse. No heartbeat. Snapping her eyes open, a bright light greeted her, making her squint. She placed her hand to cover the light, then looked at the empty space beside her. Panic rose in her gut, making her heart pound harder than ever. What is the meaning of this? As far as she can remember, she was embracing him when the strange light appeared. Where did he go? Knowing his condition, which was much worse than hers, he couldn't protect himself from anyone. She looked around, hoping to spot him in the surroundings, and that's when she noticed the trees. Probably 2 times bigger from the ordinary trees that she had seen or heard in her life. Where is she? Deciding to investigate more, she once again forced her limbs to move, wincing as she did so. She failed miserably many times before succeeding, leaning on the wood to protect her ribs. Roaming her eyes, she had found out that she was on a large tree branch in the middle of a forest. She gathered her voice, but all she heard was a very raspy sound. Doing it again after she swallowed her saliva, she screamed. And Naruto. Voice small and still a little bit raspy from dehydration. She screamed, louder than before. Her voice echoed through the entire forest and saw the birds flying from their nests, but heard nothing. She breathed heavily while leaning on her right against the tree, her hand still protecting her broken ribs. She coughed and doubled over from overexertion, tasting the metallic staining liquid while coughing. She assumed it was blood. Her every cough hurt her chest, which made it harder and harder to breathe. She shook her head. All the pain that she had been feeling right now was nothing than Naruto's. She must protect him. They are still in a war. And their only chance is him. Only him. If he dies, they will lose. Making up her mind, she noticed the droplets of blood that fell on the branch that she was standing on. She breathed and focused her chakra. She was surprised that she even had a little reserve of it after she activated her seal to fight the old bastard. She closed her eyes, healing her chest not fully but enough to keep her moving. Sakura then feels her surroundings. All living things have chakras, so she can sense every tree, plant, and animal, but all she needs to track is Naruto. She furrowed her brows as she continued to trace him but found nothing. Oh no, not this again. She tried again, and again, harder. But to no avail. Sweat began to trickle down her cheeks as she opened her emerald eyes and leapt from the branch to the ground, a wince escaping her mouth. This way, she can preserve her chakra and her strength. She started to walk, arms still wrapped close to her ribs. It hurt so much, but she has to endure the pain. She was walking slowly in the direction that she really wasn't sure of. She didn't know where to start. But she continued. Who knows? Maybe he's here. If not, then walk into another. Easy as that. And it's not like Madara was here anymore. Naruto. She screamed again. Her walk is slow, like an old man. She wandered her eyes as she passed all the bushes and trees, cursing every now and then from pain. Naruto, where are you? A sudden burst of horrible chakra broke her from her thoughts. It was almost the same as Naruto's when he used the first tail. Almost. She can't feel any demon energy from it. Just a very horrible circulation of chakra. What is it? She concentrated and found out that it was coming at her from the east. She turned and waited for it to come into her view, the ground slightly shaking as she felt its presence coming closer and closer to her. There she saw a giant, about 10 meters tall, with short hair, a bulging tummy, large eyes, a wide nose, and jaws. Of course, her eyes automatically darted to its non-existent private part, which was good, because she couldn't imagine if it was the other way around. Its eyes were seemingly focused on her and its saliva was dripping from its mouth. What the hell? She watched it slowly walk towards her. She didn't dare to move, not that she couldn't, but because she didn't see that it was a threat to her. Yet, its movement was very slow, but she still slid her hand in her small pocket to get a kunai just in case it all went wrong. And just as she thought, it started to sprint towards her at an alarming rate. Her eyes widened in shock but simply regained alertness in just a second. She throws her 2 kunai directly at its 2 eyes, and it seems like it could feel pain as its roar echoes through the entire forest. Taking advantage of the situation, she jumped back into a tree branch and made sure that it couldn't reach her. That giant man blindly raised its hand in the air like a blind person. Observing its every move, her eyes furrowed from confusion when her kunais dropped to the ground. Then its eyes go back to normal, steam coming out of them. A healing ability. The disgusting creature found her location quickly as she thought, and a creepy smile crept up to its lips. She stared at it unbelievingly. And there she thought the creepiest smile she had ever seen was size, but it turned out that it was this creature looking up at her. Sakura must think quickly. She couldn't just run and ignore it, because if she did that, she would just lose more strength. She scanned her eyes over its entire body but found nothing suspicious. So she straightened up and looked for a tree branch that was in front of her so she could go behind the creature and scan for any weak spots. Landing gracefully but painfully, she immediately scans its back as it still seemed confused by her sudden disappearance. Then she found it. A diamond shape of flesh on its nape. She was sure of it. She is Tsunade's student, after all, the best medical kunoichi in all the 5 great elemental nations. She studied human anatomy for many years. Although it is not a human, it can still be called one because of its appearance. Besides, its nape really looked suspicious. Preparing another kunai in her hand, she bolted and sliced all the way through it, then jumped back up to her position. It roared again and dropped to its knees. But she noticed that her slices had already been evaporating fast. Cursing loudly, she concealed her chakra in her blades to sharpen them more and jumped again, not waiting for it to move further. Take this, Shanaru, she shouted and went for its nape, only to get caught by its hands. Surprised by its sudden movement, she shouted once again and cut all of its fingers off. It was a good thing that her hand with a blade was free from its grasp. Pushing back her emotions as her ribs throbbed painfully under the pressure, she landed on the ground and ran from its legs to her targeted part. She did it quickly and surely this time. Her chakra-coated blades pierced to its weak spot and screamed as she aggressively sliced it. Breathing heavily, she watched when lots of steam made its way out of the gigantic man. Suddenly feeling hot, she retreated and landed on the soft and muddy ground. Feeling like she should not celebrate yet, she hardened her eyes and scanned her surroundings. She still needs to find Naruto, and knowing her continuously draining energy, she had to avoid those crazy-looking creatures at all costs. Staring cautiously at the east, she assumed that there would be more creatures from that direction, so she started to walk to the north, much alerted than before, but not 10 seconds later when she felt those sick feeling. Again. The ground shaking while she heard all of their footsteps towards her. She huffed, now feeling more annoyed and tired. Eyes searched for an escape but found none. The girl can't afford to fight those things again, especially since it's not only one, but 8, and they were coming from every direction at the same time. She looked up, knowing that it was her only option. She prepared her muscles to jump, only to stop unwillingly when a sudden pain erupted in her chest. She can't breathe. No, not now. Damn it. Sakura fell on her knees, leaning down as she tried to force some air into her body, protecting her broken ribs once again. Every time she breathed, a whiz came out of her throat. They're coming. She can feel it. Trying to stand, her body protested the movement and fell back from her position, making her feel weak. She lifted her head as they finally came into her view. A panicked yet determined smile crept into her lips. She would never forgive herself if she died from this gigantic monster. She would rather die in the hands of Madara because she's sure it would be quick and there would be no torture. And obviously, there's more honor in being killed by that man than these no-brain creatures. Ignoring the pain, adrenaline pumped into her veins when they all brought their filthy hands in her direction. Jumping at her calculated time, Sakura barely managed to land on one of its hands, suffering another injury from the sudden force in her chest. She then ran at a high speed up to its arm to not get caught again. As a revenge, Sakura took a quick slash across its nape. The tallest one of them plopped to the ground, creating a slight earthquake that made her leap to her second target's nape, slicing it until she could feel her protesting body. She winced, quickly retreating to the giant tree branch. The moment her feet touched the chunky wood, was when she realized that she had made a grave mistake. Sakura leans exhaustedly on her right shoulder, supporting her upper body with the other arm. Playtime is over. She must now locate her teammate. But how? When all these creatures are watching her every move. A sound of zipping wires dominated the entire forest, catching her attention. She squinted her eyes as she carefully observed the new person coming with strange clothing, swords, and a harness to help her fly. As the lone figure approaches her, she scans her gaze to the girl, looking for the Hite 8 for identification but finding none. She hardened her gaze. Is she an enemy or not? But the girl has that panicked and surprised expression on her face that Sakura can clearly spot when she hooked one of her harnesses to the tree above her, and it only proves that she's harmless. She just felt it, so she let her guard down. Are you hurt? The black-haired girl shouted, shifting her gaze to Sakura and the Titans, calculating and thinking of a way to escape. How silly of her to give aid without a plan. To her defense, she panicked and was curious. That's why she rushed here without even giving it much of a thought. Partially disregarding the fact that this pink-haired girl makes her heart jump from nervousness and excitement, it can wait. For now, they need to be safe. Sakura fought the urge to cough, but she failed. Great. Blood sputtered on the wood as she doubled over, closing her eyes tight from the unbearable pain that was much worse and more terrible than the last time. She groaned, then spit out all the remains of the foul taste in her mouth. Yes, I can see that. The black-haired girl bit her lip. Surely, this girl in front of her can't be moved. Seeing the damage to her internal parts for whatever she had experienced. However, it is necessary to get away with her before they become a Titan meal. She sighed. We need to get out of here. Sakura blurted out. The girl's voice was fuzzy, so she couldn't comprehend what she was saying. I need to find someone, she said, preparing to stand. She must have startled the other girl as she freaks out while detaching her harness and lands beside Sakura to help her up. Don't worry, we'll take care of that. But first, you need to get treatment, she whispered, confusion slowly creeping out of her guts. Can you describe that person? Naruto. She didn't even manage to complete her sentence as she noticed the tiny black spots covering her eyes. She lowered herself slowly. The pink-haired kunoichi shook her head, trying to stay awake. Her chest moved up and down aggressively as the oxygen left her lungs. Knowing that she will black out any second from now, and she cannot think of any other person but him. I need tea to find him, she rasped. He needs her. She had promised that she would return all that he had done for her. Making up her mind, she burst her chakra, hoping that she would find his location. If she cannot find him by manual searching, then the only option is to do this, even if it costs her own strength. She's not the sensor type after all. She burst it again, and again, probably covering the entire forest, but found nothing. Her eyelids were getting heavier as she wasted all her strength, and finally her body gave up. Naruto. Where are you? She thought as her consciousness left her body, and a thump could be heard when her body dropped to the hard wood. 2. Oh look. She's waking up. Go tell the commander. I know. Don't order me around. Sakura groggily opened her eyes and was greeted by a dimly stoned ceiling. She stared at it for a few minutes as she tried to clear her mind. Moan unwillingly got out of her lips when she tried to move her bruised body. Thank you for your hard work, you can now leave. Sir, yes sir. Where is she? She didn't even notice the time that had passed. What a great day to wake up in jail, huh? Her eyes automatically land on the source of the voice from the newcomers. Brows furrowing slightly by hearing the foreign words, she blinked slowly. Too disoriented to even control her body. She didn't try to sit up, so she just stared at them with the help of her neck in a perfect position. Then noticed a vertical stripe of bars separating them from each other. Why was she in a cell? I am Commander Erwin Smith from the Scouting Legion. It's good to see that you're finally awake. Can you tell us your name? She eyed the man with perfectly coiffed blonde hair, assuming that he was speaking to her. Meanwhile, feeling the aura he's radiating into the entire room, his body is screaming that he is a highly respected person. Her brows met. She didn't have any clue as she tried to understand what he was saying. Instead, she just let her gaze wander before noticing another man with straight and silky black hair casually leaning against a wall, an annoyed expression pointing directly at her. Their clothes seemed like they are in a same team. What? Cat got your tongue? He said, sounding more annoyed than she remembered. By the tone of his voice, she realized that they were waiting for her to speak. But a very raspy voice came out when she tried. Pain flowed in her chest every time she coughed raggedly. There's a water beside you, please fill in yourself. The blonde man said, pointing at the stand beside her bed. She looked at it and hesitantly forced her body to move just to get the damn water. Hearing a tisk as she takes her time to relieve the pain before carrying on, calmly stopping herself from rolling her eyes as she leaned her back against the wall. She moved her hand to the glass and brought it to her lips, swallowing little by little so as not to upset her stomach. After 2 gulps, she brought it back to its original position and cleared her throat. I am terribly sorry, but I can't understand what you were saying. She was speaking softly in her native language, Japanese, while looking at her hand, as she became interested in her nails. What in the world? She looked back up at them when she heard the black-haired man speak in an unpleasant tone. Did he just cuss at her? Believing her thought, she glared at him, which he brought back to her, but fiercer. Seriously? What did she do to him? Giving up, Sakura turned to look at the other man to calm herself down, only to be greeted with a raised brow and a confused face. As expected, neither of them understood what she had said. She waited as he collected his own thoughts, and not a second later, when he raised his hand to point at himself, she raised her brow at the movement. Erwin Smith. He talked slowly and pointed his finger at his subordinate. Vacker man. Oh. Is what came to her mind with the sudden realization that he was introducing themselves to her. She recalled their names as she spoke. Oh Insumisu? She pointed at the tall man. And looked beside him as she pointed. Review I Akaman. She spoke in her native tongue, and couldn't help but notice the two's amusement. Sakura didn't know, but they seemed like they were not a threat, so she lowered her guard and introduced herself. Haruno Sakura desu. She stated this with a slight bow, still wary of her broken bones. Wow. That was the most fucked up thing I've ever heard about my name. Sakura heard what Levi said but decided to ignore it since she doesn't really understand what he says. She straightened her back and looked at them again with a straight expression. I guess that's it for today. We will leave now and we'll be back. For now, let yourself rest. Erwin stated and mimicked the way she bowed earlier. Though she didn't understand what he meant, she still got what he was trying to say as he turned and made their way to leave. TCH. She will not understand you. She heard Levi said as it echoed throughout the entire place, not receiving any response. Sakura stared at the empty space, as she tried to assist her current situation. Number 1, she was in a cell. Why? Was she caught from other nation? And besides, they were in the middle of the war, so why the heck did they imprison her? Second, their language was far different from hers. It was really disturbing when she couldn't understand a single thing that they were saying. Third, where the hell is she really is? Going back to the giant forest that she had never seen or heard in her entire life. Their clothes was really different with belts and all that. And their names too. Finally, where is Naruto? Have they found him too? She wants to ask about her teammate earlier, but since they can't understand each other, she chooses to stay quiet. She stopped the urge to call Naruto in the hope that he was near her, but she couldn't take the risk. She winced while positioning herself to lie down, making herself comfortable, and placed both her hands on her tummy. She continued. What if they imprisoned her to know where Naruto is? Are they enemies? Are they part of an organization like Akatsuki? But then again, Sakura recalled their uniqueness. There's no way there will be another organization besides Akatsuki that gathers Jinchuriki. They're in the middle of the war, and it's nerve-wracking if they choose to come out now. Not to mention their chakras. It was a quick scan as soon as they introduced themselves, but the weird part is that it felt like they were only academy students, so how dare they lock her up like this? Are they trying to test her patience? She didn't want to hurt anyone who are weaker than her, so to calm herself, she just thought that maybe they were only being cautious for the sake of themselves. And it looked like they meant no harm. They even let her rest in a comfortable cell, so it's better to think that way. She sighed. She just knew that Naruto is not here in the dungeon. She wondered where he landed. Is he safe? How did they separate in the first place? She gazed at the dirty ceiling. Negative thoughts flow back through her. She had failed. She hadn't protected him, and she wouldn't forgive herself. I won't stop looking for you, Naruto. Once I've fully healed, I will find you and we will go back to where we should be. For now, I'll find information about where the hell I am. I am sure that this place is strange, very strange. If I act now, they might have something up their sleeves that will be the end of us. She thought with a cold expression, biting her lip as guilt ate her whole. After all, she can't help but conclude that they are hiding Naruto somewhere so they can use her. Chapter 3. Final question. It has been a week. And in those 7 days, all she did was sleep, heal, eat, and observe. It still hurts to fully move her body, but she can walk steadily now and do some movements. She's currently reading one of those textbooks they gave her to help her learn their language with the help of Sandra, the one who's checking her wounds. The woman was about 20 years old. She was very sweet and kind, unlike those who was guarding in front of her cell all the time, who were basically ignoring her if not needed. But of course, she couldn't let herself be fooled by what character they were displaying. She wonders if they also really imprisoned her friend, just like she's thinking. If they do, how are they treating him? In her case, they used the traditional way to heal a person, which obviously made her feel that there was really something serious going on. She's worried that Naruto may heal slowly if they didn't use any chakra to heal his wounds. Her only source of light is a candle, which makes it even worse. She can feel her eyes burning from the lack of light, so she has to rest for every 10 minutes in 1 hour of reading. Her goal is to use a proper grammar, which she found the most difficult part of all. She's not doing this just because she's intrigued, considering that she was called a bookworm. She's doing this because she had to. If she didn't, then they would have had no communication to understand each other. She would often say, you, how about? Instead of, how about you? You can't blame her though, because first of all, she was raised using different language, and she was just learning. But don't forget that when it comes to academics, she was one of the Konoha's smartest ninjas, specifically in Rookie 9. So, it will be only a matter of time to learn all this. Are you doing well, Sakura? Her head snapped straight at the newcomer, Sandra, holding a tray with her lunch, medicines, and another textbook. She sighed and smiled at the woman. She's treating her well, so she just can't bring herself to be rude, even though she's still unsure whether they're enemy or not. I think I are. Sandra-san, she said, with a hesitant facade while scratching her right eyebrow with her index finger. Hell, that sounds so wrong. The pink-haired girl blushed even more when a chuckle escaped the woman's lips, which was getting louder and louder every second. She looked away and tried to hide her face with some strands of her hair, pretending to read. Her face still pinkish from embarrassment. Oh come on Sakura. You're doing good. Don't be shy. The woman with a black shoulder-length hair and deep brown eyes said, cheering up the teen after putting the tray down on the bedside table. Putting her arms across her chest as she looked at Sakura. Look, I'm really sorry for laughing. I can't help it, you're just too adorable, Sakura-san. Sandra said, imitating Sakura's honorifics to her name. Raising a brow when she doesn't hear any reply, she decided to sit on the edge of the bed and peek at the teen's face. By the way, I think I am, not, okay. Why? I don't know, just remember it. Sandra stopped, then smiled. Actually, you're doing great. Pretty impressive for learning a new language in just 6 days. The black-haired cheered, then laughed contagiously that somehow brought a smile to Sakura's face. She remembered Naruto from that laugh. Sakura fidgeted her fingers, meeting the other woman in the eye, smiling slightly. And I've noticed your body is quite fast at healing itself. A normal person should recover in a month, but it only took you 1 week. You're that unique, huh? Sandra smirked and got up to get the plate of food and gave it to Sakura, who gladly took it. Sakura started but didn't really know what to say. Should she say that when no one is near, she secretly heals herself using her medical jutsu? Probably not. She is still not fully recovered since her chest is still stinging from time to time, but of course she will not mention that. She also could not risk the fact of saying that she's a medical ninja. They might use her to heal their acquaintances. With their way of medical techniques, she's sure that they are running out of healers and they probably sent them to the war. Without knowing what to do, she just decided to take a sip from the plain soup. The slurping sound echoes in the dungeon. Sandra sighed, getting up and said, "All right, it's my time to leave. I'm sure you can handle yourself with ease without me." Sandra proceeds toward the gate but stopped and looked back at her again with a serious expression. "I've been told that Commander Irwin and Captain Levi is going to visit you tonight. Good luck." Then she took her leave. Sakura stared where Sandra was standing before and let her mind wander. Sandra never really talked too much about them. What they do, and what they are. She had expected that from start. Whenever she indirectly asked her about it, Sandra will always ignore it and will ask about herself, which she answered mostly with lies. And from the way Sakura answered her questions, she got the feeling that Sandra thought of her as a girl who had amnesia, which she will take advantage of once they ask about her in general. There's one time where she heard those soldiers talking about their job. From what she had gathered, they have 3 different branches of soldiers: the Garrison, Military Police Brigade, and Survey Corps. The Scouting Legion is the one with the most dangerous work, which is going out of the walls to save humanity from Titans that has been haunting their lives for a very long time. She didn't know about the 2, though. And the way they speak about the walls, it seems that it was very important to them. It annoyed her when she didn't have a chance to know what it really was. Her eyes hardened. No one is talking about the war. With this, she couldn't decide whether they were really a foe or an ally. She had never about a place like this in her entire life, and it may also be the cause why she felt so safe yet wary at the same time. Recalling her previous encounter of the Titans, as they call them, a shudder ran down her spine when she heard that their friend died by getting eaten by it. Why would such a cruel and devoid of emotion creature would exist in the first place? She thinks that having an enemy like that is 2 times worse than having a foe ninja who was crazy to the core. For her, there would be no justice or a satisfying feeling if you killed your enemy who has no emotions and was just killing because they were hungry. At the very least, a crazy person can feel nervousness and be scared to death, right? Just what the hell is going on? Suddenly feeling nauseous, she put away her soup, grabbed the new textbook and crossed her legs under the covers. Her war cloth was folded on the other side of the room, and she was now wearing an ordinary cloth brought by Sandra. She sighed and glared back at the 2 soldiers just outside her cell, who were smirking at her. Judging from the way they treat her, they probably thought of her as an enemy or spy. That's why she's here. Well, of course, what else could it be? Maybe too much thinking would make it worse tonight. A few pages wouldn't hurt. She thought and made herself comfortable before starting her self-learning process for the remaining afternoon. The night finally came. She is laying down on her bed just staring at the wall while waiting for Irwin and Levi to come. The soldiers that were guarding her cell were already gone. Not a minute later, their footsteps echoed as they walked down the corridor with a loud thud. She readied herself and sat on the bed with her legs crossed under the covers. She sighed. Once they finally came in her sight, she kept her straight face on while they both stared at each other's eyes. They stopped and faced her at the other side of the bars. Good evening, Sakura. Irwin greeted. From then, she was very grateful that she paused immediately, because she swore she was about to greet them good night, and that really saved her from another big embarrassment. She cleared her throat. Good evening too. Commander. She greeted again, looking at his boots, Then look at the other man's boots beside him, bowing in mannerism. Captain, she said, debating if captain was the right word, our chief, our corporal. Luckily, it seems that she was right because they nodded their head in acknowledgement when she peeked at their faces. I've been told that you're doing well in learning our language. It must be hard for you, knowing yours was far different from ours. Erwin started, hands clasped behind him before he took a seat on the empty chair in the middle, legs wide apart, elbow resting on his legs as he leaned forward with a neutral look on his face. Taking note at the one behind him, Levi, who leaned on the wall, arms cross over his chest. It is. But I can manage, she stated slowly to make sure that she will not make any mistakes. Confidence slowly filling up her spirit as she looked at the man with blonde hair and blue eyes. Just like Naruto's. Very well. Now that we can understand each other better, you have to answer all of our questions truthfully or we will have to get rid of you. Remember that. Erwin declared in a stony face that made her kinda nervous. He had that aura, where people have no choice but to follow his orders, and she didn't like that. She's stronger than them, yes, but she can't help but feel slightly nervous by the way he is talking to her. He is their commander. What if all this time, they were just hiding their chakra for disguise? She hasn't fully recovered yet. She must have made a mistake while scanning their chakra last time, so she has to be cautious. She gulped. Sakura answered but cut off immediately. Tell us how a scum like you managed to get out of the wall, without any gear and with a strange-looking weapons. Levi started, now staring darkly at her. Scum? What do you mean? She asked, unsure of the exact meaning of the term. Lowlife, traitor. Levi spat the words like it burned his tongue, more annoyed than earlier, just like their first meet. Seriously? What did she do to him? Adding the new word to her vocabulary, she suddenly remembered what Kakashi Sensei said to them that day. Those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. Giving her a tingling sensation in her stomach as she misses her sensei, her team. She held her tongue and simply looked at them with a soft expression. As I am about to say, I don't know if I can satisfy your needs. I don't know what happened. I don't remember anything. Sakura answered in her most pitying tone to convince the two. She looked down at her hands once more, fidgeting them every few seconds to add to her little act. TCH. She heard Levi, frustrated at her answer. What do you last remember? She looked at Erwin, then shookily sighed. I just wake up. I'm hurt all over. I don't know where I am, so I just waited for anything to happen since I can't move myself. Then I saw a huge and scary thing. You call it a titan, right? She trailed, hugging herself as if she was recalling the very traumatizing part of her life. Slightly cringing from her broken German mixed with her heavy accent. I panicked and searched for any weapon and luckily found one in my small bag. Luckily, I didn't get down from the branch because from there, I saw the diamond flesh, then my instinct decided to cut through it, until it started to release gas. Sakura was stopped by storytelling when the bastard, Levi, interrupted her again. Shut up. Those weird weapon of yours can't kill any titan. I've already inspected it. Levi stated, then walked toward the bars, eyes glaring daggers at her. Hiding her annoyance, Sakura decided to fake confusion in her face. But in the back of her mind, she finds it really weird that they didn't know about a kunai. She mean, it's pretty common, right? Oh, but I just did, she said, raising a brow at the raging man. Levi surely didn't like her answer when he gritted his teeth and slid his hand inside his coat, taking out her kunai that made her eyes gleam with joy. He throws it at her, which she catches at the perfect time but fakes a startled scream. Show us how you did it. A growl plastered on Levi's face while looking at the girl who inspected her own weapon, snarling instantaneously when he saw her smile become wider much to his liking. With a clumsy movement, she placed the kunai on her hand the way she originally held it. This whole thing was not the one that she imagined. She didn't think that they would be literally this oblivious of each other, just like. Show us. Levi demanded, breaking her from her own thoughts. This man is really getting on my nerves, she inwardly screamed, stopping herself from bolting at the man and killing him right here, right now. She slightly panics, how? There's no faking her innocence and controlling her rage at the same time when Levi interrupted her. Again. Show us. Now, he said, eyes darkening towards the innocent Kunoichi. Sakura bit her lip and sighed in defeat, glancing at the small table beside her and frowned. She needs more harder than that, but that was the only furniture in her cell that she could use as an example. Hiding her annoyance, she wandered her eyes again until her eyes landed on the wall. Should she do it? She stole a glance at them, noticing Erwin was neutral as ever, and Levi. If only looks could kill, she would be dead from the beginning. With a final sigh, she darted her eyes to the other side of the wall, across her bed, and made a decision. She removed the blanket from her lower part, wincing slightly from the movement. She swung her feet to the side of the worn-out bed and shuddered when her bare feet touched the cold floor. Her feet continued to move until she was only a few feet away from the wall because she clearly didn't want to mess with her bed. I will use this wall. Is that okay? She asked. Erwin simply nodded. She then looked at the wall with rage. Maybe she would just break this wall instead of the captain's face. Gripping her kunai, she mumbled. Shanaru. Lots of dust filled the air as she sliced her kunai straight into the wall using her right hand. She coughed. That made her chest hurt for a moment. The sound echoed through the entire hall. Waving her hand, she peeked at the result, and her eyes widened when she saw the other room through the straight gap about the length of her whole arm. The width is about the size of her hand. She didn't know that she would break it like that. She didn't even swing that hard. Was it because it's made from poor material? She gazed at the two men with a shock on her face, her mouth agape widely. Realizing that she looked funny, she quickly covered the bottom part of her face with her left hand. She even got a glimpse of the two's hidden perplexed expression. I didn't mean to broke it like that. I only did it like this. See? She panicked, mimicking her movement not a second ago. Ignoring the slight sting in her whole body. Her voice still rapped with her broken German and her heavy accent. Well, it really looks light if you watch it. Looking back, she noticed the two were still staring at the wall. Erwin leaned forward to inspect her art, shock ebbed on his face. While Levi was now standing closer to the damage, annoyance was clearly written on his expression. Stand straight, Sakura. Sakura immediately obeyed Erwin's command. Standing straight, chest out, feet closed, and hands at her sides, she gulped, seeing the man's stony features. At this instant, she regretted playing as a girl with amnesia. Perhaps things would get better if she sticks to her plan where she will kidnap Levi, since he's getting on her nerves, and interrogate him if they have found her teammate. Tell us more about what happened, he said, then leaned back on his chair, staring directly at her. She looked at Levi, whose eyes were still glued to the wall, deep in his thoughts. Right. So, she started and went back to where she stopped. Oh. I walked after that, but those feelings came back, and all I knew was that they were coming from all directions. I'm injured, so, as a last resort, I jumped to the branch to get away on time. Then one of your people came and I fainted. Sakura stated quickly, forgetting the fact that she managed to kill two of those before blacking out. She didn't care if her grammar was right or wrong. It just simply came out of nervousness and she just opened her mouth. Unlike earlier, where she needed to stop whenever she felt like it sounded wrong. Barely noticing Levi's reaction from the corner of her eye. What do you mean by jumped? Erwin's frown deepens more than before. Did she say something wrong with the word jumped? Is it hopped? She asked hesitantly. Dumbass. She peeked at Levi. What does he mean? Dumb. But. She thought, her brow furrowed. Those trees were so high, there was no way a human could jump for 10 meters or more with no gear at all. Levi stated with a smug look on his face. Did they mean? You mean? You two can't jump to those trees? It's pretty simple. Her voice lowered with every word. What in the world is happening? Is this a genjutsu? Her little theory that this world is not real came back to her mind in an instant. She had a strong feeling that she was indeed inside a genjutsu, but the only thing that kept her from thinking like that was the reason why she was brought to an unfamiliar place. If this is Madara's genjutsu, shouldn't she be experiencing her greatest desires? No, all of us can't. Except you. How can you do that? Levi glared. Sakura secretly raised a brow. What? They really can't? Are they just civilian or what? Now that she had finally confirmed that they couldn't just jump on those trees, she had the feeling that they were literally just soldiers, and not ninjas. Though she can feel a little faint of chakra inside them, she didn't think that they know it existed. People here didn't really seem to know anything about chakra. The way Sandra treated her wounds, she thought that maybe she was not skilled in medical jutsu, so she healed herself using her chakra without anyone looking to not offend them, or more like for them to not get cautious at her. Remember your trump card, Sakura, she thought, reminding herself. I thought it's normal. That's weird, she muttered, faking a gesture like she was confused. Erwin. She watched as Levi took a side glance at the man, who just nodded. They were probably deciding on what to do with me. Her eyes hardened at the idea but hide it from their sight. This is not good. She could no longer undo what she had done, now that they were aware of her abilities. These are our final questions. We need you to think very carefully. She gulped as Erwin rose from his chair and moved closer to the bars, his eyes calculating and blank, his hands clasped formally behind nodded, letting him continue. Are you an enemy of us? What? I should be the one asking you that. She thought confused. Sakura didn't let go of her stare at the man, but her mind was wondering to find an answer. Insufficient pieces of puzzles linger in her senses, yearning to find their missing pieces, making them vulnerable to create the right decision. So, out of the significance of their situation, she answered firmly, no, still not daring to look away. She added, and I've long been waiting to ask that too, so, are you? We're not. She huffed and nodded. This is not what she planned for. How can she get out of this? Chapter 4. Test. We would like to apologize for locking you up. Erwin stated that made Sakura smirk inwardly. She knew what will happen anytime soon. Now that they are aware of her great potential, they will not let go of her so easily. And perhaps she can take advantage of this too. Well, I guess it can't be helped. She shrugged, hugging herself. One more thing though, can you tell me where this place is? I just feel so lost and everything is new to me, she added in a sad tone, averting her eyes, playing her role. If I tell you to die for the sake of humanity, will you do it? He asked, purposely avoiding her question like she expected him to do. With that being said, she can now really see their true intentions. Sakura squared her shoulders, acting like she'd been taken aback by the suddenness. I don't even know what you're talking about, yet you're asking me to die for someone else, she stated, looking at the two with a hurt on her face. If this amnesia thing was true, she's sure that this would be her reaction. Are they that dense? However, their enemy, the Titans, crossed her mind at that moment. Unlike her, they don't have any miraculous jutsus that can be used against the Titans. All they have is luck, knowledge, and their own strength, but once they are injured in the middle of a battle, then, their life will not be the same anymore, or worse. They will die. She shook her head. It feels so wrong to judge them like that without even knowing anything about how they train themselves to be able to join the Corps. The most important thing is, she's still not making any progress regarding her current situation, yet she is now being burdened by their own. Still, can she let them suffer when she can make their lives easier? Her eyes softened. I can't promise you that. But I'm sure if I've grown close to all of you, I will protect you. Even if it costs my life. She answered, muttering the last part as the faces of her friends flashed through her eyes. She clenched her hands, faking wariness on her face. Why do you ask? We believe that you have great potential that nobody can ever surpass. And this may sound a bit rude, but we want you to use it with us, Sakura. The blonde man stated this without even blinking. It made her think just how serious their situation was to request an alliance with a homeless, suspicious, weird, and injured teen who had lost her memory. But why me? Eyes intentionally filled with worry and self-doubt. Why yes, I'm aware that I just made a gap in that wall, and I can jump higher unlike you, but, I don't know if I can live up to your expectations. Besides, I don't even know if I can really fight. That kill was just pure luck. She stuttered, somehow finding it harder to give reasons than she expected. She doesn't want to get connected to them. That's why we're here to test it out. We'll help you, and you'll help everyone. You will save humanity. What a great choice of words. The man surely knows how to manipulate people. Really? Sakura mumbled, biting her lip. Despite the fact that she deeply wants to help them, she just can't ignore the fact that she still needs to do her number one priority, which is to find Naruto. You don't need to rush your decision. We will meet again tomorrow to test your abilities and tell you the whole story. Perhaps you can decide then. He affirmed, his thick brows raising as he waited for her answer. She forced a smile, as if mentally tired from the pressure. All right, tomorrow then, she wondered her eyes when she remembered something. She hadn't heard the captain talk for a while now. He is looking at the far corner of the room with a scowl on his face. He probably didn't like what was happening. It's settled then. I'm looking forward to meeting you tomorrow morning. I'll send someone to guide you on the way there. Erwin stated with a satisfied smile, then turned to look at the damaged wall, and to your new room. She grimaced, silently battling why she had to agree to his condition. What if she shows her true powers and scare them to make it fast? Nevertheless, she managed to speak, thank you, Erwin-san. Even if it was against her own will. T's fine. Just do what they want tomorrow and you will finally get the answer that you want. She comforted herself. That's the least that I can offer for now, he said, giving Levi a tap on his shoulder. Let's go, Levi. She bowed as they took their leave. Sakura exhaled, the stress slowly building up in her chest. The fact that they didn't understand chakra and that their level was only for a starting ninja made her think long and hard. Just where in the world is she? Also, she doubted that they found Naruto the day she was captured, since they seem like they are only focusing on her, and her only. Plus, she have already scanned the whole area but found none of his traces. Suddenly, she heard someone coming, and she grabbed all of her belongings while she waited. From the chakra that she can sense, it's probably Sandra. What the hey, Sakura? I know that you're unique, but not this unique. Care to enlighten me? Sakura smiled when she heard her newcomer. She still can't call her friend though, but she likes her presence when she's with her. Sandra-san. Sakura pouted. Did you know earlier, I was about to greet them good night instead of good evening? She looked at Sandra's face, who was stopping herself from bursting out in laughter but failed miserably. Ha 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 ha, really? My god, I can imagine your face. Ha ha ha. Sandra continued to laugh while inserting the key into the keyhole. A click can be heard as the gate opens. How did it go? She put her arm on Sakura's shoulder as she guided her to their destination while laughing as she listened to the teen's rant. They also talked about Sakura's poor English when she was just starting to learn, but Sandra also didn't fail to compliment her for what she can do now. The trip was quick, but Sakura was feeling a little bit better now. However, she's sure that she will be drowned in her own thoughts once she is alone. Well, here's your new room, Sakura. I'm going to fetch you again tomorrow morning, so. See ya. Sandra waved while looking back at her. See you tomorrow, Sandra-san. Good night. Sandra had taught her the difference between good night and good evening too, and she was glad that Sandra was with her to correct her mistakes. She waved at her. Sandra chuckled. Yeah, good night, Sakura-san. She opened the door and let herself in, thoughts clouding her mind that would surely last for a long time. The room is small but just right for one person. It has one small bed, a bedside table, and a window. As she walked towards the bed, another door caught her eye. Changing her direction, she opened the other door and it turned out it was a bathroom. Sakura was feeling sticky, and she badly needed a full bath because for the last few days, she had been just wiping her body using a damp towel. Yeah. She was grossed out too. Especially down there. She wandered her eyes as she walked in and found a new set of clothes neatly folded on the counter. She smiled. Oh. Thank Kami. Smiling from ear to ear, she put down all she was holding and stripped down all of her clothes, along with the bandages on her chest that revealed a perfectly porcelain skin. There was no hint of bruises at all. She immediately dipped herself into the steaming water from the wooden tub. She closed her eyes and felt the warm sensation for a moment to calm her mind. Not a minute later, when she decided to open it evidently with a determination to her little plan. 2. So they want you to join the training corps. Well, I'm not surprised. You're really unique and abnormal at the same time. Sandra shrugged as she chatted with Sakura, who just raised her brow when she heard another definition of herself. First unique, and now abnormal. Really, Sandra-san? How can you say that I'm abnormal? Huh? Sakura said, with a slight scowl written on her face. They were inside the cargo with a tent, so she couldn't really see or even peek outside, specifically ordered by Sandra, and that's why she's scowling at the moment. She needs to see the place, for goodness sake. Duh? Only an abnormal person like you would have natural pink hair. Do you have a problem with your genes? Sandra said as she crossed her arms and leaned on the wooden chair. How would I know? Maybe God loves me very much and made my hair pink to outshine everyone here. Sakura said, pouting. I don't want anyone to outshine me, Sakura. One day, I will sneak into your room and dye your hair black while you're sleeping. Sandra smirked. Sounds like a plan, she thought. Sakura glared at the woman. Don't you dare, or I will shave your hair as revenge. They both looked at each other intensely and smirked at the same time. Sakura smiled as she remembered that this is exactly how she and Ino fight every time. She didn't expected that she will get attached this quickly to a person. And maybe she thought that it is because she resembled her friends back in Konoha. I was planning to shave it all anyway. Sandra shrugged again at Sakura with a smirk on her face. Sakura was taken aback slightly. Whatever, I will still do it. Sakura shrugged, pouting. They became quiet for the rest of the ride, probably tired from bickering ever since the ride started. Last night was still clear in her mind. After she takes a bath, she sneaks around the whole area, in every cell, rooms, and everything that she feels wary of. But still, there's no blonde boy seen. She's frustrated, angry, anxious, and confused. With the little hope that she had left, she needed to be calm and do what they expected her to do. Maybe, just maybe, after hearing their story, she will finally be able to complete the puzzle. Not a minute later, when they came to a stop, finally, she waited for Sandra to get down before her. She closed her eyes as she breathed in the fresh air once her feet stepped on the slightly wet grass. Ah, feels like home. Exhaling the air, she opened her eyes and let them wander. They were in an open field, and in front of her was a group of normal-looking trees, just like those from Konoha. She concentrated her chakra and felt all the living things around her, making her smile. Greetings, Commander Erwin, Captain Levi, Squad Leader Hange. This is Sakura Haruno, as you ordered, sir. Sakura darted her eyes at Sandra when she spoke with a loud yet deep voice. She also noticed Sandra's pose as she stared at her commander, who just nodded at her. Sakura glanced at Levi, his annoyance gone in exchange of bored complexion. There's also a woman, with deep brown hair and glasses, who is smiling brightly at her. Sakura's sweat dropped when the woman squealed loudly while running towards her direction. At ease. You can stay here, Sandra. Erwin said as they stopped in front of them. Yes, sir. Then she dropped her pose. Sakura looked at her companion to ask who the other woman was, but Sandra just smirked at her. Sakura scowled at her and looked at the three again. Good morning, Commander, Captain, and... Sakura trailed, waiting for the woman to give her name before she bowed. But all she received was a much louder squeal as the woman gripped both of her shoulders and shook her aggressively. Sakura didn't know what to do, so she just let her do it to her while she smiled awkwardly at her. Hange. Just call me Hange. The woman said, then stopped shaking her, her saliva threatening to fall from her mouth. That made Sakura inwardly cringe. Good morning Hange-san. She greeted awkwardly, looking at the others for help. Thankfully, Levi noticed it and he snatched Hange from the back of her collar, insulting the woman as he did so, but Hange seemed like she heard nothing and continued to shriek for whatever reason. This woman is crazy, she thought while watching them with an awkward smile. Good morning Sakura. Erwin greeted her back and she stood straight, not getting over at the previous display. You already know what to do, Sakura. Are you ready? Erwin stated. She looked at him and scratched her brow with a finger while smiling awkwardly. I guess. But what exactly do I have to do, Erwin-san? She asked, hearing a slight chuckle from her side, but decided to ignore it. We will save the best for last. For now, show us your basic skills, and just liked how you jumped to get to the tree. Hands clasped behind him while he looks at her with a neutral expression. Oh. Look Levi. My hands are shaking from excitement, Hange shrieked again. Sakura's lip twitched. Shut up. Okay. Sakura started to walk to the forest while the others followed her quietly, well, except one. Yee. I can't wait. Hange squealed again when Sakura stopped and turned around. To her surprise, she saw Levi looking annoyed, and she watched as he moved his face close to Hange with a glare. I swear to God, if you can't shut your fucking mouth, I'll do it for you by slicing your throat. Got that? Shitty glasses? He said this in a menacing growl and pushed her away from him, not waiting for any reply. We both know that you can't do it Levi. Hee, Hange talked back, smirking as she arranged her wrinkled clothes. TCH. Levi crossed his arm and didn't look at her. He's much worse than Sasuke when we were still genin. Sakura secretly frowned, finding a bit of a resemblance because of their dark hair and stoic face. Are you just going to stand there? Sakura slightly jumped when he suddenly scowled at her. She forced a smile. Oh, sorry about that. She apologized and turned around again. Thankfully, she was now wearing pants and not a long skirt. She positioned herself before leaping at the nearest branch above her, which was about 2.5 meters high. She turned around again and looked down to see their reactions. She inwardly chuckled, keeping her casual face. Sandra was shocked, her mouth widely agape. Levi's eyes narrowed as well as Erwin. And Hange was the most expressive of all. Her loud screeches can be heard, echoing through the entire place. Hey Sakura. I want to see more. Can you switch there without going down? Hange screamed, pointing to the other tree, then clasped her hand just under her chin, begging her to do it. I'll try. Sakura screamed back, looking a bit scared. Sakura counted from 1 to 3 to make it look like she was hesitating. With a bit of effort to purposefully land in a bad way, She faked a scream and gripped the tree like a lifeline. "I'm fine," she shouted, preparing to stand and to try one more time. Which she successfully did this time. With surprise, she shifted her gaze to them, gaining a satisfied look on their faces. "Can I go down now?" She shookily shouted and immediately jumped back down and stumbled when she saw Erwin nod his head. Sakura was startled when Hange was suddenly in front of her, holding her hands and grinning like an idiot. "Tell me how you can do that. Tell me everything you know." Hange said something way too loud and drew her face closer to Sakura, who just moved her head slightly away from her, not daring to hide her uneasiness. "I honestly don't know how." See, can you let go of me?" she politely asked, but was stunned when she saw Hange's eyes starting to water. "It's okay. It's my fault for asking. But when your memory comes back, don't hesitate to come to me, okay?" Hange said, then hugged her. Sakura didn't move. Shock was clearly plastered on her face. Until Hange let go of her and wiped the tears from her eyes. Sakura fakes a smile. "I will. Enough of that, shitty glasses. You're just wasting our time." Levi suddenly showed up. Annoyance could be seen on his face as he pushed Hange out of his way, looking at Sakura firmly. "Now let's test your real skills." "Huh?" Sakura didn't even have the chance to react when Levi threw a punch at her face using a right swing. She ducked, her eyes widening. "The hell is wrong with this guy?" she thought, frowning secretly. "Wait. What are you doing? I don't know how to fight." After saying that, Levi was just about to kick her on the side of her face, in which she simply avoided. Too much to reveal herself. She didn't know that she was physically not capable of making her moves look bad. "Hey, stop," she shouted. She really wanted him to stop, if else, she couldn't help if she revealed herself without knowing it. Levi began to turn and kick her using his left foot. She faked a surprise. She put her arms in an X, and let herself get hit. Then it came. Her butt bounced on the ground and she looked at Levi, who still chose to continue to attack. When another kick was about to hit her, she dropped her full body to the ground and rolled until she was out of his reach. But Levi still followed her. She scowls. "Stop." Just when Levi decided to do a roundhouse kick in midair, she decided to do a back tumbling 2 times until she jumped on the nearest tree branch. She saw Levi glaring at her from below. "Get down," he commanded. "No, you're attacking me when I already said I don't know how to fight," she growled back. "Then why don't you let your body move on its own?" he growled back. Satisfied by the fact that this kid can fight like him. It doesn't matter if she truly can't remember anything. As long as she can fight, she's a threat. She was taken aback by what he had just said, but recovered quickly. "Because I don't see you as a threat. You're not a titan." Levi didn't answer. But she can see his eyes narrowing at her. She watched as Erwin walked towards Levi and put a hand on his shoulder, stopping his anger from clouding his mind. "You can go back here, Sakura," Erwin said, then clasped his hands behind him again. Even Hange became deadly serious when Erwin was the one who was talking, as Sandra and Hange quietly followed him. She jumped and landed gracefully, but made sure that she was away from Levi. "You never cease to amaze us, and I believe there's still more under your sleeves that is yet to come." Sakura almost huffed at Erwin's words. That simply means that they truly believed she had amnesia, which is good, but it is simply too difficult to continue the act. Especially when she was being attacked like earlier, her body was just moving from instinct. She looked at Sandra, who was surely the one who was ordered to report on her well-being. Looking back at Erwin, she lowered her head and let her mind wander. "As I recall from your story, you could feel if a titan was coming, correct?" She mumbled a yes, while she continued to look at her boots. "Can you explain that to us?" Hange was back to her normal self. But now, she made sure that she kept her distance from her. Scratching the end of her brow, "I'll try." She started and searched for the right word to describe the feeling without talking about the chakra. It's a very horrible feeling, just like intuition. I can't see them, but I can feel them. I remember my heart racing wildly and I have difficulty on breathing, and just like that, I will suddenly know where it is coming from. I'm sorry, it's really hard to explain." She finished, then looked at them only to see an understanding gaze. "I see, Mabe," she cut Hange off. "Now's her chance. Didn't you say you'd tell me everything? You guys know all about me, and I think that it was unfair because I don't know anything about you or this place. And what was really happening?" She asked and reasoned straight, so no one would have the chance to ignore what was troubling her from the start. With a sudden change of mood, Hange stepped forward with a straight facade, sitting on the grass with her legs crossed, and glanced at her to do the same. She heard Levi sighed as she did what she wanted her to do. Sandra does the same to her left. Erwin sat just beside Hange and Levi to her far right. Sakura gazes at the woman with expectant eyes. She leaned her body closer to hers, eager for what she would learn. After hearing the loud roar of the titan that you had killed, one of Levi's team decided to go to your location. Sakura nodded, recalling the girl with black hair. She was alone at that time and was probably the closest to your location, that's why she came alone. But when the others got there to back her up, they only saw a whole mess, especially when there were about 20 titans around your perimeter. They succeeded in killing them all, but sadly, only one of them made it back alive. Hange's words stuck in her mind. What? Her eyes widened in fear. Thank you for watching, guys.